In the dark and silent space, a small escape pod floated between the stars. It was spinning slowly like a lost piece of metal forgotten by the world. The inside of the pod was cold, and the lights were red and blinking weakly. The oxygen level was low and dropping fast. There was only one man inside. His name was Commander Eli Ward, and he was the only one left from the battle. His ship, the Horizon Blade, had been destroyed by enemy fire. The crew was gone, and the battle was over. The war had moved on, but he was still here, still breathing for now. His hands were shaking as he pressed buttons on the console, trying to send one last signal, one last call for help. He knew no one was coming. The battle had taken place in a dead zone, far from trade routes, far from human colonies. No one passed through here, not anymore. He looked at a small photo stuck to the inside wall of the pod. It showed his family smiling back at him, his wife, his daughter. Their faces gave him a little warmth, a little strength, but not enough to fight the cold that was creeping into his bones. Outside, the stars were distant and quiet, like they were watching him, like they were waiting for the end. But then something strange happened. A light appeared, a soft glow far away, moving closer. It was not a star, and it was not a rock, it was something else. Eli narrowed his eyes, trying to focus. His vision was blurry from the lack of air and the cold, but he could see it now. A ship, not human, not from the enemy. It was old and small and shaped like a shell. The light it gave off was soft and blue. He heard a soft beep, and then a voice, strange and quiet, came through his radio. It spoke in a language he did not know, but then it changed. The voice was soft but clear, speaking basic trade language. "We are not enemy, we see you, we come to help." Eli tried to answer, but his voice was weak. He pressed the signal key twice, which meant yes, please help me, and then he leaned back, closed his eyes, and waited, not sure if it was real or just his mind playing tricks. As it shut down, the alien ship moved closer, very carefully, as if afraid to scare him away. It opened a small dock and pulled the escape pod inside. The lights inside the alien ship were dim and calm. Everything moved slowly, like underwater. When the pod opened, the aliens were waiting. They were short, with thin arms and soft, glowing skin. Their eyes were large and gentle. They looked at Eli with quiet care. They spoke to each other in whispers. Then one of them stepped forward and touched his shoulder gently. He felt warm hands lifting him, pulling him out of the pod, carrying him through narrow halls that smelled of flowers and steam. They placed him on a soft table and covered him with a blanket. One of them placed a small breathing mask over his face. The air was warm and clean. Time passed slowly as the aliens worked. They checked his wounds, they gave him water. They spoke very little, but everything they did was careful and kind. They treated him not as a stranger, not as an enemy, but as someone who mattered, someone they wanted to save. Eli woke up fully hours later, maybe a day, maybe more. He did not know. He was weak, but breathing. He sat up slowly and looked around. The alien who had helped him first was sitting nearby, watching with soft eyes. The alien spoke softly, "You safe now? We find you, we bring you here." Eli looked at the alien for a long time, trying to understand why they would help him. He had nothing to offer them, no weapons, no trade, no power, but the alien just smiled and said simple words, "Life is life, help is help." Tears filled Eli's eyes, but he wiped them away. He reached out and shook the alien's hand. It was warm and small and shaking a little, maybe from fear or maybe from hope. He wanted to speak, but words failed him, so he simply nodded and held the alien's hand tight. That was how it happened. That was how one man from Earth, dying and forgotten in the dark, was saved by those no one expected. The Valari were not strong, not rich, not powerful, but they had hearts that knew mercy and hands that chose to help. No one else saw it, no camera, no news, no record, but Eli remembered, and in his heart, he made a promise. He would not forget, he would not let others forget, because kindness is rare in space, and when it comes it must be answered. He closed his eyes and slept, and the stars outside kept moving as the little ship flew away from the dead zone, carrying a man who should have died, and the story of a rescue no one believed could happen. News of the attack traveled faster than light across the alien networks. Warnings echoed through every military channel, across every galaxy, across every world where the stars were guarded by systems and laws and rules. But now all those rules had holes burned into them by the fire of one human ship, and the name of its captain became something spoken with caution, not anger, not hate, just confusion, and a quiet fear that grew like a shadow across The minds of those who once believed they were in control. Captain Genevieve sat at the center of her ship again, boots up on the console, eyes half closed, a cup of cold coffee in one hand and a small puzzle cube in the other. Her second officer stepped in with a report and a long face, but she waved it off before he could speak. They already know, she said. They always do. Let them sweat a little and smile a little and wonder if we're coming back or not. That's part of the fun. Her crew were not normal soldiers, they were misfits, rule breakers, failed cadets, and former criminals, all brought together, not by training, but by something else, something deeper, something only humans seem to understand: the ability to survive, not just with skill but with instinct, not just with weapons but with madness, the kind that makes people take chances when everything says stop, the kind that makes you jump when others freeze, run when others hide, laugh when others cry, and fight when others surrender. Every member of her team had a story, a strange one: the pilot, who once flew a damaged fighter through a sunstorm and lived; the engineer, who rebuilt a broken engine using nothing but kitchen tools and duct tape; the medic, who stitched up a wound during a zero-gravity gunfight; and the gunner, who shot down 5 enemy ships using a turret with a jammed sensor. None of them were heroes in the normal sense, but all of them had one thing in common: they refused to lose, they refused to quit, and they refused to be normal. In the outer rim of the galaxy, an alien war council was held deep underground under a crystal sky where fire mountains boiled and strange beasts roamed. The surface generals and warlords from dozens of races gathered around a large screen showing the human ship. The footage of its wild run through their fleet played again and again, each frame slowed, each shot analyzed. Still no answers, still no logic, still no peace, only silence and fear and the quiet voice of an old commander who said, "We are not fighting machines, we are fighting chaos itself." They sent spies, they sent drones, they tried to follow the human ship, but every time it vanished, every time it turned in ways no map could track, like it was dancing through space, not flying, like it knew paths others could not see, hidden cracks between gravity and time, secret holes in the rules of the universe that only humans dared to enter. And when it came back, it never came the same way twice, never struck the same place twice, never warned, never waited, only hit hard, fast and loud, then vanished. Again, like a storm, like a ghost, like a myth. Captain Reeve once landed her ship in the middle of a war zone to rescue 2 scientists trapped under rubble. They were not soldiers, not important, not even friendly to her government, but she did it anyway because something in her gut said it was right, not smart, not safe, just right. And when asked why later, she simply said, "I didn't think about it, I just went." Sometimes thinking gets you killed, sometimes not thinking saves lives, and that's when you know you're human. Back on her ship, her crew laughed again, told stories again, played music too loud, and danced too badly. Someone painted a skull on the side of the ship, someone else added wings and fire. They joked about being legends, they joked about being hunted, and they joked about going to places even the dead fear to walk, and still no one quit, still no one left, because they all knew this was not just war, this was a message to the universe that humans do not care about odds, they do not care about rules, they do not care about what makes sense. In the dark corners of the stars, more alien fleets began to whisper, more councils gathered, more captains locked their doors and read old reports about Earth, about the madness that came from there, the wildness, the storms, the fire that never went out, and they began to see the truth that had been hidden by pride and peace for so long. Humans are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the smartest, but they are something worse, something better. They are the ones who never stay down, they are the ones who smile in danger, and they are the ones who can turn a small ship into a weapon that changes the galaxy forever. And as the stars kept turning and the silence of space wrapped around every fleet and base and planet, one sound kept coming back again and again, the echo of human laughter, the echo of engines burning bright, the echo of music played too loud on a ship that should not exist, and in that sound there was no fear, only the promise that the humans would return, not because they had to but because they could, because they wanted to, and because they were born to fly into fire with a grin. The sky above the dead planet was quiet and still, with no wind, no sound, no life, only broken stone, and the bones of a war long forgotten. The alien scouts moved carefully through the ruins, scanning for signs of energy or heat or movement. Their mission was clear: find the old human base, confirm it was empty, and return with proof. The Council believed the humans had finally stopped, that they had gone too far one time too many, and paid the price. But not everyone believed the silence was real, not everyone trusted the quiet. Lieutenant Kesh of the Tharlan Guard was not afraid, but he was not calm either. His kind were born for logic and patience, for structure and planning, for war that followed rules and commands. But this place had no rules, no structure, only whispers in the dust and shadows that moved when no one looked directly at them. He raised his scanner again, tried to focus, but the readings made no sense. Heat spikes, cold drop signals in old Earth code, and then silence again, like something playing a game. Something watching, something waiting. His team found a hatch buried under layers of dust and rock, a door with human words etched into the metal, scratched and faded, but still they're welcome to hell, it said in a crooked line drawn by hand, not machine. They hesitated, looked at each other. None wanted to touch it, but orders were orders, and the hatch opened with a loud scream of air and rust and memory, and inside there was only darkness and cold, and something else, something that felt like a dream, twisted into a nightmare. They went deeper into the base, each step louder, each breath harder. The halls were narrow and strange, not like alien designs, not clean, not elegant, but full of pipes, wires, messages scratched on walls, drawings of monsters and jokes, and strange faces. The humans had built this place, not as a temple or a home, but as a challenge, a dare to the universe, a message that said, we are not afraid, we are not finished, we are still here. One scout found an old control panel still working, lights blinking in patterns no one understood, screens flickering with faces that smiled, then vanished, then laughed, then turned to static. They tried to access the logs, tried to break into the files, but the system spoke back in a human voice, calm and friendly. Hello, it said, welcome back. Do you want chaos or quiet? And when they tried to shut it off, it only laughed and played music too loud and opened doors they did not touch and called for people who were long dead, or maybe not. Then something moved in the dark, fast and wrong, not metal, not machine, not living, not dead, just something human, something wild, something left behind on purpose, or maybe something that stayed by choice, a shape that ran on walls and ceilings and laughed and whispered in a voice that sounded like a joke and a scream at the same time. The scouts fired their weapons, the lights went red, the alarms began to ring, but no help came, only noise and confusion and fear. Lieutenant Kesh ordered a retreat, but the door would not open. The system played human songs, and told human jokes, and asked human riddles, and showed pictures of soldiers dancing in fire, and children building bombs, and doctors stitching wounds with thread and wire, and the voice said again and again, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, like a curse, like a spell, like a memory too strong to break. When the team finally escaped, only 3 were left. They ran to the ship, bleeding, shaking, eyes wide and broken. They took off without permission, without command, without even checking their course, just running from something that should not exist, something that broke the rules of war and reason and science. The captain of the extraction vessel asked what happened, but none of them could speak, not in full sentences, not in calm tones, only fragments, only whispers, only one phrase repeated again and again. We woke them up, we woke them up, we woke them up. News of the failed mission reached the council faster than light, and silence filled the room. No one moved, no one spoke. They all saw the same thing in their minds, not the base, not the attack, not the survivors, but the message left on the wall of the escape tunnel, scrawled in blood or paint, or something older, something darker. We are the storm you dreamed was gone, we are the fire that never ends, we are the mistake you should not have made. Across the stars, alien fleets paused, generals revised orders, scientists rechecked scans. No one dared speak the name of the human captain anymore. No one dared ask where she had gone or if she was still alive, because now it did not matter. Now every dark corner of space could hold her. Now every signal could be a trick. Now every silence could be a trap. And far away on a ship drifting between stars, a human crew laughed again, sang again, played another round of cards, and told another story of the time they broke the rules of the universe just to see what would happen again. Captain Mira sat alone in the dark hallway of the old Earth ship, her hands covered in grease, her face marked with soot. The hum of the engine behind her felt like the heartbeat of a giant beast, calm, steady, and alive. She did not speak, she only listened. The crew was asleep for now, except for the night watch, who moved like shadows through the metal belly of the ship, waiting, watching, knowing that something was coming, something big, something loud, something fast. She remembered the last war, the screams, the fire, the stars falling like tears, the look in the eyes of her enemy when he realized the humans were not fighting for victory, but for fun, for chaos, for the wild joy of burning everything down, and then laughing as they rebuilt it with bare hands and stubborn hearts. The enemy had run that day, but she knew they would be back. They always came back, but never twice in the same way, never twice with the same mistake. In another part of the galaxy, the Council of United Systems was in panic. Old races, wise races, ancient ones, who could bend gravity and fold time, sat in silence as the report played again and again. The voice of the Tharlan scout, broken, filled with fear, filled with confusion. "We woke them up," it said again. "We woke them up. We should not have gone there. We should not have touched the base. They are not gone. They are not gone. They are not gone." No one moved as the screen showed the human writing on the wall, each word heavy like a curse, each line a warning. "We are not soldiers, we are not machines, we are not afraid, we are the children of Earth, and we bring madness with us." They had thought it was poetry, once a joke, or a threat, but now it felt real, now it felt close. Back on the old ship, Captain Mira walked to the main deck, where her second-in-command was waiting, Lieutenant Harlow, a man with too many scars and too little sleep. He handed her a report written on paper, not screen, not data chip, but paper, the old way, the human way, because they knew that machines could be hacked, but paper could only burn. She read the report slowly, carefully, each word sinking into her like cold water. The alien fleet was moving again, thousands of ships moving like a wave through the edge of the galaxy, not attacking yet, not speaking, just watching, scanning, searching for signs of the reckless humans, the ones who laughed in battle, the ones who danced in fire, the ones who made war into a game, and then played it until everyone else quit. Mira smiled without joy. She knew what this meant. The aliens were afraid, and fear made people stupid. Fear made them dangerous. Fear made them desperate, and desperate people did not care who got hurt so long as they survived. She turned to Harlow and gave a nod. He understood. Without words, the crew would prepare, the ship would wake, the storm would begin again. In the training room, soldiers lifted weights that made metal cry. They ran until their legs gave out, then got up and ran again. They joked and cursed and sang old Earth songs, songs of cities lost, songs of oceans dry, songs of wars won and hearts broken, each word a promise, each note a reminder that they were still here, still angry, still ready. In the weapon bay, engineers whispered to the machines as if they were pets, not tools. They fed them energy and talked to them like friends, because on a human ship, even the weapons had names, even the bombs had stories, because every part of the ship was alive, not with wires and code, but with soul and memory and pain and pride. Far from them, a scout ship hidden under a moon's shadow listened to the human signal, a soft hum, a slow beat, a sound like laughter mixed with thunder, and they knew what it meant. The humans were not hiding, the humans were not scared, the humans were waiting, and the waiting was the worst part. Aboard the lead ship of the alien fleet, General Zaire watched the stars move across the screen, his hands tight behind his back, his mind filled with questions. He had never feared anything before, not in 1,000 battles, not in 100 wars, but the humans made him feel something he did not understand, something wild, something cold, something that whispered, "Run and hide and never come back." He asked his advisors again, "Are they really that dangerous?" And the answer was always the same, "Not dangerous, General. Something worse, something we do not have a word for, something that does not make sense, something that smiles when it bleeds and sings when it burns and wins, not by force but by making the enemy lose their will to fight." Captain Mira stood on the bridge of her ship, eyes on the stars, waiting for the signal to move, waiting for the moment the enemy blinked, and when that moment came there would be no mercy, no rules, no end, until the last voice fell silent, and even then the humans would still laugh, because this was not revenge, this was not justice, this was something older, something deeper, something that burned in the heart of every reckless child of Earth. The alien fleet hovered near the edge of the dead zone, a place where stars once burned bright, but now only ashes remained. They waited in silence, watching the strange signals coming from deep within the black void, signals that felt like whispers, like laughter, like something alive hiding in the shadows, daring them to come closer, but none of them wanted to, none of them had the courage to enter that place, not after what they had seen, not after what they had heard. Inside one of the war rooms aboard the enemy's command ship, lights flickered over the faces of the highest-ranking generals, all from different species, all from different worlds, but all showing the same look in their eyes: confusion, fear, hesitation. The screen in front of them showed an image taken by their drones, a broken Earth ship floating, without power, without shields, without weapons, but still humming with some unknown force, something that pulsed like a heartbeat, something that sang like a war song from a forgotten time. One of the generals stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly as he spoke. This ship should not be here. It was destroyed, it was wiped from existence, and yet here it is floating like a ghost, as if waiting for something, as if daring us to make the first move. But what are we waiting for? Why do we not attack now and be done with it? An older general answered, his voice slow and calm, because we have seen what happens when you attack first. We have seen what happens when you touch the fire thinking it will not burn you. The humans are not machines, they are not warriors, they are not even sane, not in the way we understand it. They are something else, something that fights, not for land, not for glory, not even for survival, but for the thrill of chaos, for the madness of battle, for the beauty of destruction. Meanwhile, deep inside the Earth ship, Captain Mira stood before her crew, her voice clear and sharp like the edge of a blade. She spoke not with anger, not with fear, but with fire, with the kind of fire that spreads without permission, without control. She told them the enemy is waiting. They think we are broken, they think we are weak, but they forget who we are, they forget what burns in our blood. We are humans, and that is something they will never understand. The crew roared in answer, banging their fists on metal walls, stamping their boots on the steel floor. Some laughed, some cried, but all of them felt the same thing inside, a storm ready to break loose, a hunger that could not be tamed. They had trained for this, they had waited for this, not because they loved war, but because war had always followed them, always knocked on their doors and dared them to come play. In the engine room the core began to glow brighter than ever before, humming with power. The engineers smiled as they watched their old machines come back to life, not perfect, not smooth, but alive and wild and full of stories. Each part of the ship told a tale, each scar on the walls held a memory, and that memory gave them strength, gave them purpose, gave them the will to face what waited beyond the stars. Back on the alien flagship, alarms began to ring. A signal was detected, not a weapon, not a fleet, not even a message, just music, soft, simple human music, playing through space like a whisper from an old friend, a song about fire and freedom and home. No one understood the words, but everyone felt the meaning, and that meaning shook them to the core, because it meant the humans were not afraid, it meant the humans were ready. The generals looked at each other, not sure what to do. The usual plans would not work here. Logic had no power over madness, calculation had no use against chaos. They had never fought an enemy like this one, who turned pain into strength, who turned fear into fuel, who smiled while burning. One of the younger commanders leaned forward and asked, "What do we do now?" And the answer came not from the old ones, not from the wise ones, but from the silence that followed, because deep down they all knew the truth. You do not fight fire with steel, you do not fight madness with numbers, you survive it or you don't. Captain Mira stood at the front of the bridge, her hand resting on the command lever, her eyes locked on the screen, where the enemy fleet waited, still silent, still unsure, still hoping that maybe, just maybe, the humans would back down, but she had no intention of backing down, not now, not ever. She pulled the lever and the ship roared like a beast set free, lights flashing, alarms screaming, metal shaking with joy and rage and hunger. The human fleet moved as one, not with formation, not with elegance, but with fury, wild and untamed like a pack of wolves in space, chasing their prey, laughing as they closed in. The enemy ships tried to form lines, tried to prepare defenses, but it was too late. The storm had already arrived, the fire was already burning, and nothing would stop it now, because the humans were not coming to win, they were coming to remind the galaxy that they were still here, that they were still wild, that they were still the fire that would not die. The void between the stars trembled as the human fleet tore through it. Their ships moved like wild animals, not in formation, not with caution, but with raw speed and reckless force. Every engine roared like fire, every hull burned with the glow of weapons ready to strike. Captain Mira stood on the bridge of her ship, her hand gripping the rail, her eyes sharp and bright, her crew around her like pieces of a storm, all ready to crash together and tear apart anything that stood in their path. They were not many, not compared to the alien fleet, but they did not need to be, because they had something the enemy would never understand, something the enemy could never copy. Far ahead the alien fleet waited, their lines stretched wide, their weapons charged, their minds heavy with fear and confusion. They had prepared for war, but this was not war, not in the way they knew. This was chaos wearing a human face, this was fire wearing a human smile. They watched the humans coming closer, no hesitation, no fear, no shield, just speed and noise, and a strange kind of joy that made no sense to any of them. On the alien flagship, General Zaire stood tall, his claws gripping the edge of the table, his voice cutting through the command room like steel. Hold your fire, he ordered. Wait until they are close, wait until you can see their eyes. But even as he spoke, he felt doubt crawling through his mind. He had faced many enemies, he had crushed rebellions, burned worlds, defeated armies with nothing but strategy and patience, but these humans, these strange reckless humans, made his blood cold because they were not like the others. They were not bound by rules or logic, they were something raw, something free, something dangerous. The human ships hit the first line of alien defense without slowing. The clash was like thunder, the stars lit up with fire and smoke and broken metal, but the humans kept going faster, stronger, their voices screaming through comms, not in fear but in laughter. The sound chilled the hearts of the aliens who heard it, because no one laughs like that, no one laughs when death is so close except humans. Mira gave her orders fast and sharp, but with a strange calm. Turn engines full, burn to Sector 3, fire all cannons now, send the drones to slice the back line, leave nothing standing. The crew responded like a single living thing, moving with instinct, not orders, their hands flying over controls, their faces glowing with the madness of battle. They lived for this moment, they breathed for this chaos. They had no plan, but they did not need one, because they trusted their own fire, their own instinct, their own ability to make the impossible happen. In the heart of the alien fleet, panic started to spread. One line broke, another hesitated, their formations began to crumble like sand under waves, because the humans were not fighting a battle, they were making a storm, and storms could not be controlled, could not be predicted. They just came and tore apart everything in their path. The alien ships fired back beams of light, missiles of fire, waves of energy that could tear a planet in half, but the humans dodged, they rolled, they spun, they charged right into the middle of it all, like they did not care about living or dying, like they were daring the universe to try and stop them, and every time it tried they laughed and went faster. General Zaire shouted for reinforcements, shouted for shields, shouted for control, but none of it mattered. The humans had already broken through, already set fire to the core of his fleet. His screens showed chaos, his officers yelled in fear and confusion, his mind raced, but there was no logic, no answer, no strategy that could fight what he was seeing. On Myra's ship the crew sang as they fought, songs of old earth, songs of storms and fire, songs that told the universe, we are here, we will not fall, we will not stop. One gunner fired shot after shot, laughing like a child. Another pilot spun through explosions like it was a dance. The engineer shouted updates while fixing 3 broken panels at once, and Mira just smiled, a sharp, fierce smile that said, this is who we are, this is why they fear us. By the time the alien fleet tried to retreat, it was too late. The humans were everywhere, like shadows, like fire, like a nightmare that could not be outrun. Every ship they touched burned, every defense they faced crumbled, every commander who saw them froze, because it was like watching a storm move with purpose, like watching lightning choose its targets with a grin. When the battle ended, silence filled the stars, wreckage floated like broken memories, flames burned in the dark, and the human fleet drifted through it all like hunters after the kill. Calm, slow, but still wild, still dangerous. Mira stood on the deck, looking at the ruins, her eyes soft but her voice strong. Let this be a message, she said, let them all remember why we are here, why they should never think we are gone, why they should never forget what humans are. The stars were quiet now, the fire had faded, the wreckage floated without motion, and the silence of deep space returned like a cold wind. The human fleet hovered among the broken ships and shattered metal with their lights dim, and their weapons cooling. The battle was over, but the war was only just beginning. Far across the galaxy, eyes were watching, ears were listening, minds were racing, because the story had already started to spread. It moved faster than light, faster than sound, faster than fear itself. On a distant moon where the air was thick and red and machines never stopped humming, a group of alien generals gathered around a glowing table, their faces long and dark, their eyes sharp and filled with dread. The transmission they were watching showed only fragments: a human ship crashing through a fleet, a pilot spinning through fire, a soldier laughing while explosions lit the sky. The images cut in and out, the sound was cracked and broken, but the message was clear, and every being in that room felt it in their bones. One general whispered, "They came through the core line like it was smoke." Another said, "They did not even use shields." Another muttered, "They fired while they were spinning. They danced through our formations like they were playing." And one said the words that made everyone freeze, "This is what fear looks like. This is why every fleet we send comes back broken or never comes back at all." The message reached 1,000 worlds. It crawled through wires and satellites. It jumped from ship to ship. It spread in whispers, in taverns, in command rooms, in markets, in schools. Young ones asked, "Why are they like this?" And the old ones answered, "Because they do not fear pain, because they do not follow rules, because they do not fight to win. They fight to remind the universe that they are still here." On Earth the victory was not shown with parades or medals or long speeches. Instead there was a quiet moment on the surface of a green hill where Captain Mira stood alone. The wind touched her face, and she closed her eyes. She remembered the battle not with pride, but with respect for the lives taken, for the fire unleashed, for the storm they had become. She knew this would not be the last time the stars called for chaos, and she knew the humans would always answer. Back in space on a small ship hidden deep in the void, a single alien survivor drifted in silence, his hands shaking, his breath shallow. He had seen the humans up close, he had seen their eyes as they charged, their joy, their madness, their strange beauty. He tried to record his words for his people, tried to explain what he had seen, but his voice kept breaking, not from fear alone, but from something deeper, a strange feeling he could not name. He said, "They fight like they have nothing to lose. They fly like they want the stars to burn. They speak in fire. They live in the edge of every moment. They are not like us. They are not like anything else." And then his voice cracked again, and he whispered, "I saw one smile while his ship was burning. I saw one pull another from a wreck. Even as bullets flew, I saw them sing, as if the universe was a song they were writing as they bled." His message was picked up days later by a listening post. It was broken and half-corrupted, but the words that remained were enough to stir fear and wonder and confusion in the hearts of those who heard them, and soon after that message became a story, and the story became a warning, and the warning became a legend. Do not fight the humans unless you want to meet the storm. Do not stand in their way, unless you wish to be remembered as dust in the wind. Do not forget that recklessness is not weakness. It is a fire that burns without care. It is a river that breaks mountains. It is a voice that shouts, "I do not care what comes, I will face it anyway." The galaxy began to change. Alliances formed, plans shifted, fleets were recalled, generals argued over maps and weapons, but always the conversation came back to one name, one people, one race that refused to bow to anything: the humans. In hidden halls where dark empires ruled, ancient beings whispered of a time long ago when humans had been nothing but dust and fire, and now they whispered of a future where the dust had become a storm and the fire had found its voice, and that voice was singing again. And somewhere in the black silence of space, a young human cadet looked out at the stars with bright eyes and a heart full of fire. He had heard the stories, he had read the reports, he had watched the battles, and he smiled not because he wanted war, but because he understood now that every human carried the storm inside them, and one day when the stars called again, he too would answer.